You know, it's actually pretty surprising when you find out a song like Love for Sale, one that feels so classic now, was once banned from the radio for being too provocative.
It really is.
Okay, let's really get into this. This deep dive, based on our source, is all about unpacking the story behind this, well, controversial but incredibly lasting piece of music.
Exactly. And our source gives us a great look into the history, how it was created, the outcry it caused, and really its enduring legacy. We want to pull out the key insights and, the fascinating details about Cole Porter's love for sale for you.
Yeah, and to really grasp Love for Sale, you sort of have to picture America in the 1930s, the roaring 20s vibe gone. The country was deep in the Great Depression,
Oh,
just
yeah.
widespread economic hardship, a lot of anxiety everywhere. Our source really stresses that this backdrop is, well, essential for understanding a song that deals so directly with transactions.
That's a really important point because the jazz eights before it that had this spirit of like breaking norms, right?
Yeah.
But the crash in '29 just slammed the brakes on all that.
Mm-hmm.
So our source highlights that in the early '30s, society's grappling with this economic instability, and maybe a song that just lays bare the idea of love as a commodity. Well, it tapped into those anxieties in ways people didn't expect. What specific economic anxieties do you think it might have hit on beyond just, general hardship?
That's a good question. Maybe that feeling of desperation, of having to sell, well, anything you could, even something as intimate as affection. Maybe that reflected the broader economic struggle our source talks about, that sense of disillusionment.
I think so. And then there's Cole Porter himself. Our source really emphasizes how complex his personal life was.
Right.
Being a gay man when society was intensely homophobic, managing that while having this very public, sophisticated image, and his marriage to Linda Lee Thomas, often seen as, well, a marriage of convenience.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder, based on what our source suggests, how exactly did that duality, the public face versus the private reality, seep into the themes of love for sale?
Well, our source mentions his elite background and all his travels. That exposure to different cultures, different attitudes, it likely gave him a unique angle, right? Instead of just wondering, can we maybe connect that exposure more directly to why he made such bold lyrical choices?
Oh, absolutely. That background, that worldliness, it probably gave him a clearer view of society's hypocrisies. Most songwriters then stuck to safer, more romantic themes.
Mhm.
But Porter, he was willing to push things. Our source really underscores how incredibly bold it was for that time to put a song about a sex worker, giving her a voice, right at the center of a big Broadway show.
Which brings us right to the show itself, The New Yorkers, in 1930.
Yep.
Our source describes it as the satirical revue trying to capture both high society New York and its underworld, based on a story by E. Ray Goetz, apparently aiming to show the city's contrasts.
Exactly. And Porter's song, Love for Sale, it was originally performed by Catherine Crawford. Our source paints a picture of a really direct staging.
How so?
She was playing a streetwalker,
Right.
literally selling her services
Yeah.
right there on stage. And the reaction, our source says it was immediate and pretty harsh.
People were shocked.
Yeah, the overt sexuality, particularly having a white actress in that role, it scandalized a lot of people. The press called it immoral.
Wow. It's kind of hard to imagine that level of outrage now. It makes you think about how norms around sexuality have changed, and maybe what hasn't, but the backlash, our source confirms, was big enough that they had to change it.
They did. They moved the scene, set it in a Harlem nightclub instead, and they recast the part with Elizabeth Welch, an African-American performer.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how our source notes that this shift changed how people saw the song.
Our source does suggest it kind of diffused the immediate shock, but it added another layer, didn't it? How did Welch's performance, specifically as an African American woman, alter the song's impact and connect it, like our source says, to Harlem's jazz scene?
Well, what's fascinating, according to our source, is that Welch brought this sort of jazz-infused subtlety, maybe a world weariness,
Yeah.
that hit differently. And placing it in Harlem's jazz world, a culture known for exploring desire and hardship with such nuance. It aligned the song with this really powerful musical tradition. Maybe it shifted the focus away from just the shock value towards something more like commentary on the human condition.
That makes sense. Our source describes Love for Sale as kind of turning the typical torch song on its head.
Right.
Usually those songs are all about lost love, unrequited feelings, very emotional. But this song flips it. We get the perspective of someone actually selling love. It becomes, as our source argues, more about love as a commodity.
Precisely. It's this really interesting mix of like sensuality and resignation. Instead of just heartbreak, Porter's character, as our source points out, seems very aware of the economics involved. She's not really crying over lost love. She's kind of shrewdly looking at the market supply and demand.
And you hear that right away, don't you? Love for sale. Appetizing young love for sale. Our source highlights how love is instantly framed as a product using that commercial language.
That word appetizing, our source points out, it creates this immediate sense of something consumable, drawing a direct line between love and, well, something you'd buy. And Porter keeps using market terms all through it.
Yeah.
Supply, sample. Very deliberate, our source says, and very effective.
Then those lines, love that's fresh and still unspoiled, love that's only slightly soiled, love for sale. Our source notes the almost uncomfortable honesty there, playing with purity and experience, but it's all transactional.
Yeah, slightly soiled. That's such a powerful phrase, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our source notes how it admits a loss of innocence, but still tries to be alluring, really hitting home the commercial aspect. It makes you wonder, does that hint at some societal need for even transactional things to seem somewhat pure?
And the chorus. Who will buy? Who would like to sample my supply? Who's prepared to pay the price for a trip to paradise? Love for sale. Our source mentions how those questions feel like both a desperate plea and just a routine sales pitch. And trip to paradise, well, our source clarifies that's a pretty obvious euphemism.
Exactly. It's temporary pleasure on offer. And repeating love for sale just keeps hammering home the speaker's role and the transactional core of it all, just like our source highlights.
The last stanza really hits hard. Let the poets pipe of love in their childish way. I know every type of love better far than they. Our source emphasizes that stark contrast, the romantic ideal versus her very real, maybe even cynical experience.
What's so striking there, according to our source, is how she just dismisses romantic idealism. Her claim to know every type of love isn't theoretical. It's from experience, totally different from naive poetic portrayals. It really cements the realism of her view, as our source argues.
Musically speaking, our source points out it's a 64-bar ABA form. Now, for anyone not deep into music theory, that's basically a longer version of a standard song structure.
Right, gives more room to develop things.
And it allows for more development of the melody and themes. It's in B-flat minor, and those key changes, the harmonic shifts, they seem to mirror that emotional uncertainty we've been talking about.
Yes, and our source mentions the use of chromaticism. Those notes outside the main scale that add unease and syncopation, that slightly off-kilter jazz rhythm. Both add to that feeling of something both seductive and, well, a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
The melody itself is described as lyrical, but also kind of conversational, with these leaps and slides that emphasize certain emotional points.
And the harmony is complex, too. Our source talks about modal interchanges and altered dominance, basically sophisticated musical tricks that add depth, even as the song tackles this really raw subject. It really shows off Porter's skill as a composer, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Whether it's a big orchestra or just a small jazz group playing it, our source underscores that the song asks a lot from the musicians, technically and emotionally.
So, despite all that musical richness, we know it got banned from radio initially, faced a lot of criticism for the subject, but our source emphasizes it eventually got recognized for being bold, for its musical quality. It really gave a voice to someone usually marginalized and critiqued that idea of love as just another product.
And in doing that, as our source highlights, Porter genuinely pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable in American popular music. He took this controversial topic and handled it with such intelligence and, frankly, elegance that he opened up new possibilities for songwriters.
It's really interesting to look at some of the famous interpretations. Our source mentions Billie Holiday's 1952 version.
Oh, yeah.
It just drips with sadness, vulnerability, that slow tempo, her phrasing. It adds so much pathos.
Yeah, Holiday's take, according to our source, really digs into the emotional weight, hinting at the pain under the surface. But then you've got Ella Fitzgerald's version.
Completely different.
Totally. Our source describes hers as showcasing wit and her amazing vocal skill. It's almost playful, a totally different feel.
And then there's Miles Davis's instrumental from '58. Our source points to that moody, kind of melancholic sound. It really captures that sense of longing, maybe the emptiness of the transaction, without needing any words.
Exactly. And more recently, you have Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga. Our source notes their collaboration brought it to a whole new generation with this big theatrical take. Shows it's still relevant, still adaptable.
And our source reminds us there are countless others. Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae. So many artists have tackled it, each finding something unique, highlighting its emotional depth.
It really says something about the song's richness, doesn't it? That it can be interpreted so many ways and still hit home, a testament to Porter's genius, according to our source.
So thinking about its legacy, our source is clear. Love for Sale is seen as one of Cole Porter's major works. Despite all that initial fuss, it became a jazz standard, a cabaret staple, and it kind of paved the way for songwriters to be more honest, more direct about difficult subjects later on.
It really did anticipate that shift towards more candid realism in music theater and pop music. It left a real mark on artists who came after, as our source concludes.
And when you think about it today, its relevance. Those themes in Love for Sale still echo, don't they? In conversations about sex work, sure, but also about capitalism, about personal agency. That cool, unsentimental tone, the irony, it still feels incredibly sharp.
The core things, the clever lyrics, that haunting melody, all the layers of meaning that keep it fresh, it just feels timeless, like our source suggests.
Our source even pulls out some great quotes. Cole Porter himself apparently called it one of his personal favorites. That says a lot.
It does.
And Ted Gioia's quote, calling it one of the most subversive songs in the Great American Songbook. That really sums it up,
It
right?
really does. It
Ah.
challenged people, made them think, but wrapped it all up in this sophisticated, unforgettable song. Our source strongly backs that view.
So wrapping up this deep dive, based on our source, Love for Sale is so much more than just a well-known tune. It's this complex piece of art reflecting its turbulent time, Porter's own complicated life, and it was really daring challenge to social norms back then. Quite a journey from scandal to enduring classic.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder of Porter's brilliance and the song's lasting message, as our source clearly shows.
Okay, and on that note, here's something final for you to chew on. Think about those themes, commodification, how we present ourselves that are so central to Love for Sale. How do you see them playing out today? Think about relationships in the digital age, how we kind of market ourselves personally and professionally, even ongoing debates about different kinds of work. What does this song written almost 100 years ago tell us about how we still value and exchange different kinds of, well, love, or maybe just value today? Something to really mull over after our look into the source material.